So I'm going to start this podcast with a bit of an outtake. So I just wanted to show you the preparation for how we do this. First of all, I'll take my blue light glasses off. Sorry about the winter beard, which is still there. It'll be going soon. So I just want you to see, so I've made some notes here for the podcast. Here's a score that I'm studying. And here is my assistant. This is my agent, Montgomery Bousfield. And this is Rupert Bear, who is also joining me on the sofa today. Rupert has been with me since the day I was born, and we spend a lot of time together. So here we go. With the permission of my agent, I will commence the podcast. The age-old question, do you need to be a good player to be a good teacher? I've heard so many different theories on this, and I've even had aspersions cast on my teaching abilities because people will say, well, he finds playing the trombone so easy that he doesn't understand the struggle, he doesn't understand the mechanics behind playing it. I've heard that leveled at a lot of really good players. I can think of a couple of home players, one Italian, one Austrian, who they can do things that we can't even dream of doing. They're just miraculous, but I don't think they know how they're doing it. The great trumpet player, Maurice Murphy, had pretty much, by his own admission, no idea what he was doing. I keep talking about Maurice, don't I? And certainly I've had that leveled at me in the past. And when I was a kid, I guess it was probably true when I first started teaching. I remember someone laughing once when I was in my 20s because he said, you know, you kind of say to students, he goes like this, what's your problem? See, he goes like that, it's easy. And I guess I've had to spend a lot of my career trying to reverse engineer what it is that I do. I do find a lot of things come naturally. And I've had to try and reverse engineer what it is. And so I'd like to just look at a few of those issues with you. I think as a teacher, we accompany students through different parts of their journey, their evolution and their development. There are those people who specialize in beginners, and what a speciality that is. And then there are those who teach what I think is the most difficult age, 12 to 18. That's really a skill. And there are probably fewer teachers in the world who are really brilliant at that than actually the age afterwards. You've got those who are really good at dealing with bachelors, and then the masters and on. And I would say probably masters and on is what I'm, masters specialised, whatever, doctorate. It's kind of what I would specialise. But that said, the finest players that I've had, the best players that I've had come through my class, the Mike Buchanans, Peter Moore, Isabel Dawes, Matthew G, now Sophie Bright, all came to me when they were 12, I think. I think Matt was a little bit older. But basically, around there, 12, 13. But they're all very special players. Anyway, I think, and of course they would have been without me, I think, but there you go, there's being a little bit honest. And if we look at those different skills, how good do you need to be as a player in those different ages? Well, I would say the skill of the 12 to 18-year-olds is the methodical, this is how you tie your shoelace, this is the exercise you do this week, this is the one for next week, and knowing exactly what the next piece in the jigsaw puzzle needs to be, that you don't ever set a student a challenge that's too far beyond them. It's just that little bit, just that carrot that's just keeping them moving, but it's not too far. That's a real skill. Because you've got to match that to each individual student. and to go through all of the basic technique to make sure it's solid. I think the US and the UK, I think, are really, really excellent at that in general. You know, I see so many players, 16, 17, 18, completely sorted out. You know, I see them, I'm not going to name any, but I know 16, 17-year-olds now, it's like, oh, they don't need any technical work done. Someone's done a fantastic job with them. So what's the next step the whole time? But here's the thing. I used to go to Wells Cathedral School every year. I've done it for about 27, 28 years actually, maybe nearly 30 years. And it was my favourite concert venue. I used to go there and just start with a stack of music on the piano and do a concert. And they'd be these students would be hanging from the rafters in this really old concert hall. It's like 1,000 years old, I'm not kidding. And there'd be a terrible draft blowing through the stained glass windows, and wonderful, really beautiful place to play. And I just start playing and decide what I was going to play next, and when I got tired I finished the concert, sometimes beyond when I was tired. But there were 12-year-old kids sitting there on the front row watching me, literally about a slide's length away, play for 2 hours. And I was relaxed and happy, and two of those were Mike Buchanan and James Bockel, who's the bass trombone player in the Philharmonic Orchestra. And both of those have a really special voice of communication. And several others at that time. You know, Wells was really, really a production line for fantastic trombone players, partly because of the wonderful teacher, Alan Hott, who was there. Emily White's doing it now and doing an excellent job. And she's carrying on that tradition. So, of course, 98% of it was the amazing work that was done in-house. But then to be exposed to a really top player on top of their game, really, really enjoying themselves, really creating, at this distance, I think has an amazing effect on a young player. And I've told this story so many times, but I learned more about playing in an orchestra in 2 days when I was 16 years old, 17 years old. Schulte came to conduct the European Youth Orchestra, and he brought his own coaches, and he thought it would be a good idea that the coaches played the first concert of Heldenleben. So I sat behind, we didn't have a trombone coach, just a brass coach and a horn coach. So I sat behind Adolf Herseth and behind Dale Clevenger. And they were on top of their game as well. It was around 1980, 1981, something like that. And to hear it that close up, it's like, so that's how you do it. And you never forget it. So there is no substitute for exposing a young person to excellence. And whilst there are some good players who teach, words will only do you so much. You can only explain that journey to a certain point, beyond which they have to experience it for themselves and hear it. They have to hear somebody who's gone and taken that further step, close up. There are a few players where I've said, where they say, oh, so-and-so's a great player, but we don't think they can teach. No, I think, yeah, I agree with you, they probably can. Go and have a lesson with them and just sit next to them and tell them to play all of the excerpts. Horn players. I'll tell you one of them, Wolfgang Tombak in Vienna. Or Alessio Allegrini. Go for it, just tell them to play. Just sit next to them and hear that close up, and it will change your life. They're remarkable. So there is no substitute for that. Kids are sponges. And here's the point. they will soak up everything, good or bad. So if a student has if a teacher has a less than optimal slide technique, guess what? If a teacher bulges on notes, guess what? If the teacher has a less than ideal embouchure, guess what? Young players, they're going to idolize their teacher and they're going to look at this and think, wow, I'm going to do that because my teacher's better than me. Yeah, teacher is better than you, but is it the ultimate? And so that's, I think, really, excuse me, I'm getting distracted because I think Monty nearly fell off the settee, didn't you? It's okay. So I think we have an obligation as a teacher at whatever age to expose young players to correctness. This is how you stand, this is how you hold, this is how you breathe, this is what an embouchure looks like. And do you know what? If somebody has a less than ideal embouchure, I think that's okay. But tell the student, see the video of this person playing, you see the way they do this, you know? I quite often show students a video of a certain person playing something or a recording, listen to this, hear this. And so those are the obligations. We have to be kind of like clean, technically clean. And here comes I'm just looking through my notes here. Yeah, I think I'm doing everything kind of as I wrote it down. Do we all hear the same thing? No. Development and growth on at least the trombone, I'm sure on every instrument, is a matter of hearing it. If you can hear precisely what it is that you want to do, you will do it. And you need to be shown that example. And you need to have your ears trained. If these don't work, there's nothing much that a teacher can do for you. If anything else is not working, we can fix it. So, as I've said so many times, it's a question of when you're teaching, it's a question of, can you hear what I'm playing? Can you hear the difference between what I'm doing and what you're doing? Can you hear what I'm talking about? And that's really important, because if a student leaves the room not knowing what they're supposed to do, how are they going to achieve it? So you need to hear the point, that beautiful point, which I've said so many times, where they come in and say, oh, my sound, my articulate, oh, nothing's working. You say, great, good, your ears are now working. So now you can hear what was always happening. Good, we fixed it. So, do you need to be a good player to be a good teacher? No. Definitely not. Do you need to be a great player to create great students? Yes. Think about this now. How many great trombone players do you know? There aren't that many. Lots of good ones. Great ones? I'll be honest with you about another teaching school. In Amsterdam, I think they do a really good job. I think it's very solid, good trombone education. And I don't think Jürgen does an awful lot of teaching there. I know he does a solo class on a Wednesday afternoon. But who's one of the most expressive, soloistic, creative trombone players that you know? Jürgen. Guess what? The students from there are always expressive. They're always musical. And you can feel them trying to create something. Because on a regular basis, they're exposed to that. Yeah, sure, the students have other weaknesses. Yeah, but that aspect's there. It's not a coincidence. Where did Jürgen study, speaking of yoga? Where did you study? I'm a big fan, by the way. Michel Becker sprinkled his magic dust. If we want to do the last 3%, let's say, it may be more than that, then we need to have close exposure to someone who's been there and done that. And our job, as those people who have been in that last 3%, is to see how far back down, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, we can go. And like I said, I'll admit, teaching 18-year-old first-year bachelors is a challenge for me. Teaching 18-year-old already superstars is not. That's okay, I can deal with that, that's okay. And I tend to get those. So I think that's the point. As a teacher, there is no greater or lesser value as to which part of the journey you accompany a student on. Like I say, the teachers that I have the most admiration for is the 12 to 18. That's because, you know, they're going through so many changes in their life and they're becoming kind of on their journey to becoming adults and they don't know what they want to do, and you have to keep them inspired and you have to keep them on task, you have to keep them correct, and they're going to rebel, and it's really tough to keep someone loving music, you know, getting them to the age of 18 and really loving music, which is, I think, is the key to it. That's what I can see with those teachers who are successful between the age of 12 and 18. They all have the students completely enthused and loving music. Whilst at the same time, when they're not looking, getting them a little bit correct as well and making sure nothing goes too far off the rails. And that leads me to another point on a general education point. Is, like I said, I think in the UK, I think in America, we do, what do they call it, the hard miles early on, the difficult stuff. We deal with those thorny issues of basic technique much earlier. And so I think American and British players tend to be held back in relation to, let's say, French players, or some now German, Austrian players, whatever. They take off. Because they've been coached, learn this piece, learn this piece, learn this piece. But if you look really carefully, you know, what about this basic technique thing, and what about that? And anyone who tells you that's not important, run really quickly, get out of there. So the basic technique, the basic quality of articulation, sound, the way we go from one note to another is important. And to get that right sometimes takes a lot longer. And it reminds me a little bit of a story. As you know, I'm very interested in wine. I'm not drinking at the moment. I'm actually seeing if I can go a year without drinking alcohol to see what it's like. But I once stayed in a house in Burgundy. I rented a house from this guy who was a chemical salesman to the vigneron's. I said, "You're the enemy, aren't you?" And he said, "No, I'm not. A bad winemaker is the enemy, not me. If you are in the vineyard every day and you see one little bit of rot, you need, let's say, 1 unit of my chemicals. And it's done. It's nothing. It will barely even register. But you've snuffed the problem out right then. If you leave it 3 days, you're going to need 10 units. And if you leave it 2 weeks, you need 1,000 units. And there are so many parallels with that, with teaching, that if you get it right, if you get the basics of anything right, at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, the young person has a clear road ahead of them. If you let basic error build upon basic error, the work that needs to be done down the road is so much more soul-destroying and takes so much more time. And I have had so many talented young players who've come to me, and I've tried to reverse engineer a basic technique that should have been put there, or should have been there, and has just been allowed to pass. And in some cases it's like, we're never going to do this. We're never going to really totally fix this. But we'll find a way around it. You know, that's also, so like, okay, that's not going to work, forget it. No, we have to find a different way around it. But it's not ideal. And so whatever we do in life, in music, on the trombone, because I'm going to quote Rex Martin again, I always do. This is the one I'm using the most with my son at the moment. How you do anything is how you do everything. How you approach your homework is the way you approach the trombone, is the way you approach how tidy your bedroom is. You know, it's so taking care to get things absolutely right early on with a student is paramount. And that leads me slightly on to a slightly different subject. My son is 12, plays the trombone very well, and he's playing numbers that and so he's kind of that level now, Elegy for Mippy, that sort of thing. And I've never really had to talk to him about basic technique. Sounds strange, doesn't it? Why? Well, I'm the only trombone player, me and his mom, because she picks up every now and then, it still sounds amazing. If I'm not home, she teaches him, but if I'm home, I do it. We're the only trombone players he's ever heard or seen. Guess what? His embouchure looks like mine. Guess what? He moves the slide like I do. Guess what? He sounds like I do. Actually, no, he sounds more like his mom. His mom has a lovely sound. And he hears me doing warm-up exercises and he copies it. And guess what? He's not running into any technical issues. So showing a young person the best possible example all of the time is the most important thing. Now, that said, I'm stewarding him, I'm watching him, and I'm saying, yeah, I know you can play high, but please don't do it as much, yeah, okay? I'll give you a limited number of high B flats, high Cs per day, and that's it. And you don't force it. And I'm watching the embouchure the whole time. It's just, he's starting to cheat in any way, and so far, touch the wooden music stand, he's not. So far, it's all staying, but I'm sure the issues will come. So, I guess the bottom line to this incredibly long ramble, I apologize, is exposure to excellence is paramount. It's everything. I was called into, I remember there's a very fine young player, Nick Platoff, was in San Francisco, is now in Houston, and he was playing in the Verbier Festival. He was doing Mahler 3, and Michael Tilson Thomas called me up and said, yeah, I'm not quite sure Nick's getting it. I'm not quite sure whether he's playing it the way I want him to do it. We've done it a lot together. Will you come down and coach him? You just live over the hill. And I said, well, I'm on holiday. It's the summer. I actually haven't played for 2 weeks. It doesn't matter, come down. Okay. So, Nick, you were young. And you were talented, but you were young. And he played it. And of course it was good. But I could see it wasn't quite what Michael usually wanted with it. I could see that, you know. And you know, I try to explain this, do this, try this, you know. And I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was saying, maybe think about this, think about that. And I said, where's my trombone? Really bad. And he got it straight away. Nope, that didn't mean that he had to play it really badly. It meant he got the idea of the approach immediately. You know, so a note is worth 1,000 words. You know, it's like, kind of like that, you know. And like I say, it was horrible what I did. I thought it was anyway. And I had a similar experience last week with my class in that we were working on Schubert 9, the great C monster, C major. And I was talking about this and articulation and long but clear and, you know, the disappearing into nothing so it sounds like the phrase continues. Because, you know, if you play the silence is dead. But if you go it continues. And I talked about it and I was like this. And I played it. And then they did it again. And it was like, yeah, I should probably play more often for them. Same thing, just fixed it immediately. So it's a question of training young people's ears as to what they need to hear. Do you need to be a good player to be a good teacher? No. But going back on it, if you want to create a great player, you have to expose them to greatness. You have to expose them to those people who have gone into the last 3%.